Hey Ravens fans, we're with Assistant General Manager Eric DeCosta. Eric, I know it's a busy time, so thank you very much for taking the chance to talk with us today. When you look to the draft, next week, is the board set? How much, finagling are you doing with it at this point, and how many guys are on there that are, considered draftable players?
Well, the board's never set, pretty much even during the draft, the board is changing. Could be as we draft a player, that position may not be, as important to us. We're not going to draft 5 safeties in the draft or 6 safeties in the draft. So the board changes, the shape of the board, the positions change, the value of the player changes based on what we've done, based on what other teams do. This year, unlike other years, we find that there's probably about 185 players that we think are draftable players. In most years, we're trying to get to 150. So this is a very, very deep draft with a lot of extra players. We're very excited about that.
Positions of need that have been debated with the Ravens: left tackle, safety, wide receiver, inside linebacker. Picking at 32, do you expect a quote-unquote elite player at one of those 4 positions to still be there? Is that tough or possible?
Well, I think, John, in some years there is an elite player there. The year we drafted Todd Heap, we felt like he was an elite player. He was a tight end. That value of that position is probably suppressed a little bit in comparison to a position like left tackle. Probably unlikely that we're going to get an elite left tackle at pick 32. Better chance that we'll get an elite guard, elite safety, elite inside linebacker, elite tight end, rather than an elite corner, elite wide receiver, elite quarterback, elite left tackle.
Really kind of fill out your roster from those day 2, day 3 picks, and you add guys like a Dennis Pitt or an Arthur Jones, people that really kind of fill out that roster. Is too much emphasis put on the first round and that first pick?
Well, you spend a lot of time talking about those guys. The media scrutinizes those players, and because of the value of the contracts and the money associated with those high picks, you do spend more time on those players than you would the lesser known guys. However, I think looking back on drafts, when you really evaluate a draft, you're basically evaluating the draft on all the other players. It's expected that you're going to hit your first round pick. We assume that we're going to hit our first round pick. If you're not consistently hitting your first round pick, you're not doing a good job. It's what you do in the 2nd round, the 3rd round, the 5th round, the 6th round. That's really how you evaluate yourselves as personnel guys.
Some people say it takes 3 years to evaluate, but now you've had the chance a lot of those guys had the chance to play and get out there and play key roles. What do you think of last year's class?
Well, I think it's still an open debate. I think they played well. Some of the guys played well. Obviously Courtney played well as the season went along and really developed as a really nice outside linebacker for us. I think KO came in and started every game. We're very happy with him. Bernard Pierce, we saw his improvement over the course of the season. But now there are other players, the Christian Thompsons, the Gino Gradkowski, the Asa Jacksons. Those guys have got to improve in the offseason and really propel themselves into getting more playing time, and that's the challenge set for those guys.
With 12 picks this year, it's a lot of picks that you have. How does that impact what you're able to do, and move around the board? Does it really? I know there's some that can't be moved, but there's a lot that you can. I mean, does it really have a great potential there?
Well, I think, John, with the flexibility to move up and down the board based on the 8 picks we can trade, I think that helps. In some years when you don't have as many picks, you're pretty reluctant about maybe moving up, giving up some picks to go get a guy because you still want to have all those other picks. Having all the 8 picks that we can trade, I think, gives us the opportunity to maybe make some moves. If we covered a player that's still available, maybe we go up and get him. Maybe we deal some of those picks for some value next year in that draft. We've been talking about doing that for years now, maybe giving up, a 5th round pick for a 4th round pick next year, or a 4th round pick this year for a 3rd round pick next year. The league will give you value that way if you're able to do that and trade back for a pick next year. So we have a lot of flexibility. I think the key thing we want to try to do is approach each pick like it's the only pick that we have. And I learned that from reading some stuff Jimmy Johnson talked about with the Herschel Walker trade, back in the day, and how, the key is to really nail every single pick and not to just think that you have all these picks that you can just throw away because you have so many picks. You've got to treat each pick like it's the only pick you have and you're trying to nail that one pick.
You talked a little bit about the idea of trading. Kind of take me through that process of saying, maybe somebody's falling down the board and we want to go up and get him. What is that process of deciding whether you make a move to go up? And is there a point where is there a cutoff? Is it 10 picks? Is it 15 picks where you say we can't move up past this point?
Well, believe it or not, the decision's made before the draft. And what we try to do, one of my responsibilities is to come up with all the different scenarios as the draft unfolds so that we are prepared for basically any scenario that could happen. So we have, as we go through our list of players, we break it down by players that we would consider trading up to get, players that we would trade away from, maybe players that are there when we were picking that we would consider trading away from. There will be some players Like for instance, Luke Jokel from Texas A&M, the left tackle. If he's there at 32, we're picking him. Okay, we are not going to trade away from him. There will be some other players that if they're there on the clock, we would consider trading away from them, acquiring value, and then trying to select another player. We iron all that stuff out 2 days before the draft. And we meet as a group, a couple guys will meet, we'll kind of tweak that a little bit, go through all the different things that could happen, and then finally come up with what we call the game plan, which is basically as the draft unfolds, what are we going to do? And we stick to that. We don't deviate from that at all. We have a plan going in. It's very well organized, and it basically covers the first, second, third, and fourth rounds. Fifth, sixth, and seventh rounds we just kind of treat, individually as we're on the clock. But the first, second, third, and fourth rounds, it really is scripted, and we cover that exactly like we're calling plays of a game.
A couple years ago, you waited for the second day to take a receiver who wound up being a huge difference maker, Torrey. Did that experience influence you any way in terms of maybe picking a receiver going forward, that you don't necessarily have to be on the first day? Did you learn something from that?
Well, we did, and I think what we learned is really if you're drafting a receiver, draft a receiver who's tough, competitive, and has a tremendous work ethic. Torrey Smith, really, in my mind, what makes him special is his personality, his makeup, his work ethic, his demeanor, his drive. A lot of times I think people get seduced by the 40 times and the vertical jump and the catches in college and inside-outside ability and his workout and the game tape and all that stuff. And all that stuff is really important, but I think personality at that position is critical too. And I think we learned that with Torrey because he is such a special person and he does have such a great work ethic and demeanor and drive and all that. He's made himself a fine player.
You look through the draft and you go through your evaluation process. Sports analytics has moved into the NFL in the way it has been in the NBA and in Major League Baseball in past years. How has that changed things, and has that made the draft any more of a science than it was, maybe 5, 10 years ago?
Well, we try to make it a science. In the end, it really comes down to subjective gut, feeling on all these guys. It's a decision that we make, and we use analytics, we use statistics, we use game tape, we use the interviews. We call it face grading. We use the blink, mentality. Basically, when you see a guy, when you meet a guy, how do you feel? Do you think this guy has a presence about him? Use everything you can. You kind of mix it all up together into a batter, and then you try to bake a cake, basically, and you hope the cake tastes good.
Last year, I remember you said, that's a depth draft for the Ravens. Is there a similar title this year, you think? What type of draft is it?
Well, I think it's a foundation draft. We're trying to build through the middle, whether it's that safety, inside linebacker, defensive tackle. We're trying to build from the inside out. We feel like we're covered on the edges. We've got good corners. We like our receivers. We like our pass rushers. But we're really trying to get strong again up the middle. We've lost a lot of good players over the last 3 or 4 years through free agency. And we want to bring in some quality guys to really strengthen this foundation. We've lost leadership, tremendous leadership with some players. We want to bring in some good young leaders with a mentality to be that next crop of Ravens. We're looking for that next group of guys to come in and carry the mantle for the future.
Pick number 32. With this pick, is it a matter of somebody falling and waiting, and you just have to kind of wait it out and see? Take me through that and take me into that draft room on Thursday night.
Well, we'll be prepared for basically any scenario. We'll know who we really want. We'll have a lot of players to pick from. We'll have 32 players on our list that we will be happy with at that pick. Now, ideally, we'll get a player that's higher up in our sequence list, whether it's 10 or 15 or 20, rather than our 32nd player. And I think that the thing that's really fun about the draft is any time a player gets picked outside your 32, there's jubilation, because you're getting that much closer to getting a guy that you really like. So anytime this outlier player gets picked, and it happens all the time, there'll be 5 or 6 of those guys drafted in the first round, then you basically move up from your list. So instead of 32, you're guaranteed to get one of your 31, and then the next time a guy gets picked, you got 30, then 29, then 28 to 27. Then before you know it, you're looking at one of your top 12 prospects, or maybe your top 15 prospects. That's the excitement, I think, for the scouts and coaches in the room. It's like a holiday.
Well, it's an exciting time of year for us, I'm sure for you as well, so thank you, Eric, very much for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks, guys.